Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. This is Joe, the bearded historian. He'll tell you an interesting story. Be careful of his soldiers, they can be brats. This is Angel, she's an entity. She'll cause chaos and plant her hands at you. This is Sue, she likes spirits, not the alcohol. She's the reason this channel exists. This is David, he likes fire trucks. He's here occasionally. Bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong, bing bongy bong. We preserve his story.
It is a Wednesday. Today, Joe is rambling about the football draft. They're drafting players to play football. He's talking about like the odds and making it in football. Nah, I'm not gonna share that. Anyway, are you ready? Here we go. Shout out time. Here's a shout out just for you. You support me, so I support you. This shout out is for our friends. Let's see who it is today. I chose a food race. Go. Go. There we go. Okay. And then we've got Lucy in Ohio, and Derek, and Teza, and Wright, and Jared, and Cheap, Cruising Nuts, and Southern, Bluegrass, and Richard, Abundance, and Frugal. There's Catching. There's To Eats, Ogden, Melinda, TNT, Neil, Turtle. There's there's Togs. Wright's currently in the lead. Rooks, VS. Let's see, who else do we got? There's Roto, there's Buddha, there's Rooks. Let's see. One Busy, Mayhem. And it looks like it's a Rooks today. Okay, it's kicking it with the Rooks. And it says, description here. What up, yo? Kicking with the Rooks. We're down to earth, beautiful, blended family from Memphis. I had to think about that one for a minute. That loves to have fun. Our channel, you'll find a variety of vlogs, traveling, challenges, pranks, and more. So they are a blended family, and they're very cool about the family. And look, they've got some goals here. That's kind of cool. Be successful full-time content. There's something they're working on. Travel for a living. I've debated that one. And then 10Ks they're currently looking at reaching. They're one of our bigger channels. They're currently at, well, actually under 10K. They just haven't updated their about page. And as you can see, it's a family vlog. We've got some shorts here, some lives, and they do games and travels and things like that, and regular videos. They're cool people, and I see them out and about a lot. So check them out, like, share, comment. Have a good day. All right, Mr. Bud, tell us a bunch of numbers.
Okay, well, we're going to go a little sideways on our usual historical facts with a little play on the fact that the NFL draft is coming up. And we've if you follow football any, this is one of the holidays of the football fans, because you get to see people who, did really good in college might actually be able to go on to the pros. And it's like the annual right. Everybody wants to see their team draft the next great quarterback. Every team wants to see if they can find that one or two pieces that they need to get to the playoffs. And, it's a real creative adventure. The big thing that I was looking at, and I imagine some of us have already seen this sheet, but at the same time, it kind of puts it into perspective. They have a chart that says the odds of making it in the NFL. And the first thing that stands out is all these players, most of them had to come through high school football. You know, the Friday night lights games, all those fun things. And it gave a number of 1,086,627 players in an entire, group of students all across the country. Then the seniors out of that number was about 310,000. So about a little less than a third. Now, the NCAA football players whittles it down even further. You get down to, 70,147. So right away, you went from over 1 million to under 100,000. It's just, there's not that many positions in NCAA football, both in the Class A and the, up through Division II, stuff like that. Then you got the freshmen, the juniors, the seniors. Percentages for high school players that make it to the NCAA is only 6.5%. That is a way low number. And, sometimes you might even have those, 1 in 10,000 odds of a guy who was playing in Africa or American Samoa or in Europe. He might walk onto one of these teams and show them something they've never seen before, And then, again, it's going to be these schools. Schools are constantly recruiting. They're looking for players to fill in their rosters when guys go on up to the pros. Or if somebody gets injured. They're constantly switching players out. Now, interestingly enough, then it goes to, you're looking at the players that get scouted by the NFL. That's about 6,500. The seniors playing football in the NCAA, that's 15,588. So a little less than half the NFL is looking for. And, it might be the next quarterback. It might be a great running back. It could be a great cornerback. It could be the kicker. Different teams are looking for different things. Again, you figure a roster has X number of spots available to it. And say this quarterback here is getting old. We're going to replace him. This quarterback over here, not saying anything about Kirk Cousins, he winds up going to another team. Vikings are going to be looking. Or they'll take and trade for somebody else over here. But at the same time, do you want to get a guy who's fresh, straight out of college? Or do you want to have somebody that's going to be a stopgap for 2 to 3 years? My team right now, we would love to get one of the top quarterbacks, but by the time we draft, the Raiders probably won't be on the board for one of those guys unless they make one heck of a deal with one of those top programs. Last time I heard, they were hoping to move up to the number 3 spot, but as of right now, it doesn't sound like that's going to happen. Now, players that get scouted by the NFL, you'll see the guys show up at the games. They'll be making notes. They'll be talking to people. They'll be, gathering what details they can. Is this guy smart? Does he take and do his schoolwork? What's he like after the practices? What is his, goals? A lot of stuff, they are basically writing a book on the guy. So that way they'll know if their quarterback is worth the investment that a team is going to put in for him. I think back to when you had Ryan Leaf versus Peyton Manning in the draft. There were a lot of guys that says those two quarterbacks should have been bookends for the next X number of years. Peyton Manning, he took off with the Colts, did really well for a number of years. Ryan Leaf blew up on the launch pad. And it's for some it's a sign that, if you take and watch how you're going to draft, you can make those smart calls. in more recently when they had Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers both come up. And Eli Manning kind of put his foot down, thanks to Dad, and said, I don't want to play out in San Diego. And so the Giants made a deal. Eli Manning wound up leading them to 2 Super Bowl wins. Phillip Rivers had some excellent years as a quarterback for the San Diego Chargers, but they never were able to get to the big game. They got close a couple times. But then, the other thing that teams also need to consider is that, let's say you've got this Caleb guy that the Bears want. Is your team only one player away from being able to make an impact? Do you trust your team to have enough talent with all the guys they already have to just drop a fresh quarterback in there and say, ta-da, we're done. We're going to the playoffs. The big thing that they need to realize is that what made that quarterback special was the guys he had around them. Once in a while, you're going to get a really good quarterback who is smart, is talented, and he can instantly get the backing of the team. All the players are going to like him. They're going to be able to, hit the ground running. And hopefully that quarterback can stay healthy. And so it's a lot of that there comes down to the fact that, let's take some of the days when USC was having some really good years. And they would be like, okay, well, we've got Reggie Bush. We've got, these players here, this guy here. How much of that team was the powerhouse to push that team along? Notre Dame had the same effect, back in the 90s. You had Tim Brown, you had Raghib Ishmael, you had, the quarterback. All those players, now if you put this guy over here, this guy goes over here, this one goes over here, are you going to have 3 Notre Dame teams? No. This one's going to have a better running back. This one's going to have a better wide receiver. This one's going to have a pretty good quarterback. But it's because each of those players is what's going to help said team benefit. Now, when they start going through the scouting reports, obviously, a good scout might pick up, small details. But they also have what's known as the combine. Combines come out, and players will get to basically compete and put together their numbers to show other teams, okay, this is how fast I can run. This is how fast I can, go down the field, pivot, and make the catch. This is how fast I can get rid of the ball. The 3-cone drill. All these things come down into play. And they can look at those statistics and go, this guy might actually be what we need for a good wide receiver. Hey, time and time again, you've probably heard me talk about it. Cliff Branch was literally a track star. The guy could break it down the field, and unless an opponent put 2 guys on him, he was gone. He'd like hit a third gear. Down the field he'd go. The Chargers hated that guy twice a season. They just did not like playing against him. 3 times during the season when they make the playoffs. But then you got, questions on, if he's got speed, does he have hands? Again, my Raiders, we've had some great guys that we've looked at for the draft who are absolutely fantastic when it comes to speed. They've got cement for hands. They cannot hold on to the stinking ball.
What's that? Hold on to the ball?
Well, for some reason they don't like us using stickum. I don't know why,
Oh, man.
We can hit him in the back of the head. We'll put the stickum back there, Theoretical ideas. But now, what it all comes down to is it comes down to the draft. And the draft is where, as they say, the money really is going to start becoming the decision makers. Because, you are only going to have 256 guys that get drafted. Now, as the draft goes along, players are going to come off the board. Some players that get drafted don't make it. I remember one year it was so crazy. The Raiders had one season where literally only 2 guys out of 11 wound up staying with the team. A couple wound up, being cut. They went off to other teams, like Miami went over here. I remember one year it was really stupid because they drafted one guy, and it was so sucky because he was having a great season. And then he got, I think it was intoxicated, and killed a lady when their car crashed down in Vegas. It was really sucky. And so he's probably going to be out of football. And it's a sad way to throw away your career. But, those are choices that a young guy had to make, and he made a poor one. But then, you're going to have guys that, look good in college. Are they going to be a good fit for that team? You're hoping that the scouts made the right choices. There's been some times that teams will make a draft, and they'll do the dumbest thing when it comes to their turn to pick up a guy. I remember one year, watching the draft names go through, and all of a sudden the Raiders came up to the podium, and they said Robert Gallery. And I was like, who? And, this was a year when Fitzgerald got drafted. There were all these other guys. There were quarterbacks. Instead, Al Davis decided he wanted this big lineman, this big guard. And it made no sense. Like, okay, well, who's he going to protect if you guys don't have a quarterback? It kind of defeated the purpose. But now, once all these, players get drafted, then you have what are basically the undrafted free agents. These are guys who, again, it might be an extra kicker. We usually refer to them as camp hands, extra quarterbacks. You might have, rookies making the team, extra players that, have talent. They also have what's known as the taxi squad. Yes, no, they're not running around with little taxis. Aww. Basically, they're players that every week your pro team will compete against the rookies in the taxi squad, basically to keep everybody fresh. Also, if, say, your third string wide receiver pulls a hamstring and can't play that week, they might have to grab one of these guys off the bench and put him in. One year it was really crazy because literally, I think it was a total of 16 guys all wound up on the injured reserve. And when you go on injured reserve, back then, you were out for the year. You weren't coming back. And so it got so bad to the point that I think they wound up using 6 different quarterbacks that year. It was just, if I was the center, I'd be like, who are you again? The new quarterback. Great. Costco? Yeah, I shop there.
Well, so it came apart.
Yeah, I was going to say, or Sears, Fix to repair daily, come in. Now, through all these players, through the combine, through the draft, through the rookies making the team, the percentage of guys that go from the NCAA to the NFL, you shrunk all the way down to 1.6%. Now, again, going from high school to the NCAA, that dropped everybody down to 6.5%. So out of 1.86,000 players, you're going all the way down here to 1.6% are going to make that jump all the way to the NFL. That is a small margin of error. Now, the other two stats that come in unique on this, these are based off of 2014. It's still 6 years later. 150 NFL players make it to year 4. That's getting through injury, low performance, suddenly finding your skill sets diminished, or just, you're no longer on a team that can afford you. It gets crazy sometimes. That's 150 players out of X number of teams. Now, the average minimum NFL salary back in 2014 was $420,000, which, don't get me wrong, that's some serious, dolage. But is that going to be enough for you over 4 years? Now, after your taxes, that whittles it down to $252,000. Uncle Sam got greedy. Sorry, it happens. You're an adult now.
No.
But what's crazy is that, a lot of these guys, with everything that happens, surviving 3 years of NFL, or, 3 years of NCAA college football, and then 3 years of the NFL at a minimum salary, is that going to be able to put it all together for you and help you last once your football career is done? No. And that's why, a lot of these players, the big thing that they seem to forget is that, when you go to college, you're not going there for a football career. You should be in there looking for your education. Find out everything you can. And even if you do, happen to, break the bank and sign one of these good deals, keep your college going. Learn everything you can at the college level. Because guess what? When your knees are shot and you're like me, creaking and snapping as you try to get up and down, eventually that college education is what is going to be, in the long run, what keeps you going. It's going to be paying the bills. And granted, I remember a guy by the name of Randall Cunningham. And he was really good in football. But he had to take and retire for a short time. And he was doing drywalling and counter work. And he got a chance to get back into the pros. And he says, I am so glad I got a chance to do this, because I realized exactly how much work it is in the main sector, but it also gave him a good perspective of how life is once your football career is done. Right. And so I think that's what a lot of these pros, you hear stories about guys that have to sell off their Super Bowl rings or, lose their jerseys and stuff like that to make ends meet. And I think in a way it's both kind of interesting, but it's also kind of sad when Ray Guy wound up having to get rid of a Super Bowl ring, because the history is out there for some of these guys. But the big thing I think that they need to do is they need to also tell those stories about, guys that were able to go back, graduate, and keep their future going. So once the games stop, real life kicks back in. So this has been the Bearded Historian. You guys have a good one. Check out the draft, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Don't enjoy it too much.